Popular opinion among fans is that Dragon Ball is an anime that lacks substance, and while I get where that's coming from, I think it's shallow and unfair because it has some of the best characters. Every single villain is written with amazing care and creativity. Almost every single villain is written with amazing care and creativity. Yes, they can be super over the top, but that's what makes them so fun. And this characterization gives us so many impactful moments. But there's one character that is written a level above the others. He might not be your favorite villain, but Cell's characterization and introduction are the best in Dragon Ball Z. Keep in mind, I said Z, not the entire series, because I think there's one introduction even better than his, but that's for another video. I actually think all three versions of Cell are introduced in very intelligent ways and have a lot of strengths and some weaknesses when it comes to characterization despite technically being the same character. But I'm only going to talk about Imperfect Cell in this video, so we're not here for hours on end. And before I get into what's great about Imperfect Cell, I want to get into what's bad about Dragon Ball. I love the show, but you'd be lying if you said it didn't have a teeny tiny problem. And no, I'm not talking about how death basically has no meaning. I'm talking about exposition dumps. It's actually a recurring issue that's been present since the start of Dragon Ball, but since a lot of people haven't watched Dragon Ball, I'll talk about the start of Z instead. Specifically, the issue with this scene.
I could tell it was you at a glance, Kakarot.
Kako, what?
My, how you look like our father.
Huh?
What does that mean?
Wait, hold on a sec. You know this guy?
Kakarot, what the hell have you been doing here all these years? Your mission was to terminate every native life form on this planet. So, why haven't you carried it out?
Let's take a step back. First of all, what even makes good exposition? In a general sense, it's when you don't even know you're being given it. So what's wrong with this scene? We learn that Goku's real name is Kakarot. We learn that Raditz is his brother through the phrase, our father. We learn that Goku was supposed to be on a mission. This gives us enough information to piece together what might be happening, but also leaving us more curious. It's literally perfect. And you might be thinking that there's a but wait coming, but no. There's nothing wrong with this scene. The issue is what comes after it when we're literally told Raditz's entire history, the Saiyan's entire history, and Goku's entire history. One thing I want to note here is that this isn't a bad introduction to Raditz, because this isn't how we're introduced to him. The first time we see him is when he lands and comes out of his Saiyan pod and effortlessly deflects a shot from a farmer, which kills him in the process. This shows us how strong he is and how little regard he has for the lives of others. The next scene shows Piccolo, who is Goku's strongest opponent up until this point, shocked and terrified as he senses Raditz's presence. That is a brilliant character introduction. So now that you've seen some of the good and bad of Dragon Ball, let's talk about some of the best of Dragon Ball. It's really difficult to make a villain more terrifying than Freeza. From his immense power to his mind games to his complete lack of sympathy, he will always be Dragon Ball's, if not anime's, most iconic villain. But I want to put the point forward that Cell is even more terrifying. So leave your opinion in the comments for who you think is more terrifying, and let's see if I can change your mind by the end of this video. So we're done with the Freeza saga and we've met Trunks, and the androids are currently the focus of the story. But we receive information that something's happening in Ginger Town and Piccolo goes to investigate. Silence. There's something odd happening. Ginger Town should be sprawling with people enjoying their day, but instead it's empty, save for clothes littered about the place. The show uses a series of creative camera angles and sound effects that make it feel like we're the ones looking at Piccolo, but instead we know that someone or something is watching him. Eventually we hear footsteps, one after another, and this is soon followed by the sounds of something being dragged across the floor. We see the silhouette of something that surely can't be a person, and Piccolo snaps in its direction. And then, once again, there's silence. The only sounds left are those of water droplets echoing in the town that vanished. And then, we finally see him. This is such a perfect, excuse the pun, scene. We're not even treated to any dialogue yet, and just from the cinematography, we fear Cell. It's like a genuine horror movie. But it's not this scene alone which makes Cell so terrifying, because there's a lot happening before that builds up to this scene. Bulma alerts the gang that one of her company's vehicles has been found 50 miles outside of Gingertown, and it just so happens to be Trunks' time machine. But that can't be right. After all, Trunks has his time machine with him. This must be a different time machine. But then how does it have the exact same writing on it that future Bulma wrote on Trunks' time machine? And why is there a hole in it? And what's this thing? All of this just adds to the mystery of what's happening in Gingertown. Our entire focus is on the androids, but something else has been happening under our noses. And that only adds to how creepy and eerie Cell's reveal is. And then we have his fight with Piccolo, who has just fused with Kami to become, for lack of a better term, a super Namekian, and is getting his ass handed to him by Cell. Granted, he's already tired from fighting Android 17, but he was stronger than Cell when they first met. So how could Cell be so strong in such a short amount of time? How many people must he have absorbed? Keep in mind that the way Cell gets stronger is by absorbing organic life. He has to absorb people one by literally sucking the life out of them until they are less than a pile of bones. So Piccolo isn't just terrified of Cell's power, he's terrified of what he must have done, the amount of people he must have killed to become as strong as he is.
How many people?
Enough.
And all of this culminated into one of Dragon Ball's most terrifying villains. But as great as his characterization is, his introduction isn't perfect. Because much like Raditz, right after he's introduced, Cell tells us how he has the techniques from all the Z fighters and how he needs to absorb 17 and 18 to become perfect. So I ask you again, who do you think is more terrifying? Cell or Freeza? Honestly, for me, it's still Freeza. Cell made me feel dread, panic and unease as a kid, but he always kept hidden. He was weaker than the Z fighters and was on the run. Compare that to Freeza. With just a few lines exchanged between Gohan and Krillin, we know he has an army of soldiers each as strong as Vegeta, and he himself is over 100 levels above Vegeta. A lot of the early Cell interactions were spent trying to catch him, whereas the early Freeza interactions were avoiding him and hoping to get away. But that's not to say one is better than the other, and maybe you think a different villain is more terrifying than the both of them. Let me know what you think in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for more Dragon Ball and anime content. See you next week.